Welcome, fellow consumers, to Consumer Math Lesson 3.2, Hourly Wages and Salaries. Our objectives to learn include calculating hourly wages, calculating overtime, and calculating double time or holiday pay. In the Bible, we are told that work is necessary for survival. Genesis 3:19 says that by the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the earth. This means that work is the means by which we feed, clothe, and house ourselves. That work is valuable and that we are capable of trading our labor or skill for something we need or want. 2 Thessalonians 3 and 10 says, "If anyone would not work, neither should he eat." This is in regards to personal responsibility. If a person can work to provide for themselves or those they love, they should. We should never expect someone to give us a free ride, and we should never take advantage, but instead do our fair share. The only ones outside of our families that we should be willing to provide for are those who cannot provide for themselves. The Bible distinctly lists them as the widow and the orphan. The Affordable Care Act of 2014 defined a full-time employee as one who works 30 or more hours, and a part-time employee is one who works less than 30 hours a week. This is a classification based on the job you are doing. A standard work week, however, is about 40 hours a week. 5 days a week, 8 hours a day is 40 hours. This is a typical schedule that most people have, although some employers, such as hospitals and factories, adjust those shifts to be longer hours and fewer days. For instance, a hospital might require a trauma nurse to work 12 hours on, 12 hours off until they have worked 3 shifts, and then they get the rest of the week off for a total of 36 hours a week. This allows a trauma nurse to work at least 2 different hospitals or to work part-time at a clinic. This way, they can almost double the amount of pay they receive. Time and a half is paid when an employee works more than 40 hours for the same employer. Double time is paid to the employee that is working holidays. So if you've ever asked yourself why someone would work on Memorial Day or Thanksgiving, this is why. Our vocabulary includes gross pay, which is the total amount you make when you calculate hours times your hourly wage. Net pay is the amount after federal and state deductions. Take-home pay is what is left over after you have contributed to your 401k, employer health insurance, retirement plan, or stock purchase. In example 1, Jim works part-time at a grocery store and he earns $11.15 per hour. So that's our first little bit of data and information that we need to know. That's his hourly wage, right? That's his hourly wage. That's how much you make per hour. Last week, he worked 26 hours and 45 minutes. So this is his time. That is the time worked. So we need to find his gross pay. So here's the calculation for finding gross pay. You take the hourly wage times the time, but it needs to be in base 10. What that means is it needs to be in the same format as the money, because our money is the format we want it to be in for our answer. We want to find the dollars we're going to make in that time period. So we need to have this in the same format as our hourly wage. Well, right now, it's in 26 hours and 45 minutes. It's in a time format. So to convert that, what we need to do is recognize the differences. And the difference is that this is based on 60 minutes in an hour, and money is based on 100 pennies in a dollar. So we're going to convert this to a decimal that represents a percentage of $1 that those minutes represent, or a percentage of 1 hour that those minutes represent. And the way we do that, first of all, we're going to recognize that this is a whole number. We don't have to do anything to that. The only thing we have to calculate is the minutes and figure out how much of an hour those minutes represent. And all we have to do is put the 45 over the total number of minutes in an hour, which is 60. We do the division. 45, a fraction is just a division problem. So 45 divided by 60 is going to give us 0.75. So we add this to the whole number, 26, and that is going to give us the total time. So the time, we have our hourly wage, which was $11.15 times our time in base 10 form, which is 26 hours and 0.75, or 26.75 hours is the same thing as 26 hours and 45 minutes. If you recognize that 75 means 3/4, you also know that 45 minutes is 3/4 of an hour. So you can see the correlation. You can see that it does work. This is the right way to do that. So whatever minutes you have that are less than an hour, you put that over 60 and you divide, you add that decimal to the total number of whole hours, and that gives you the number of the time in a decimal format, not a time format. Now you just need to do this calculation, and we could do that on the calculator. We'll pull that up, and we are going to say $11.15 times 26.75 hours, and that's going to equal $298 and 2,625 hundred thousandths. Yes, 100,000ths. But we need that in money format, and always you round money to the 100th place because there are 100 pennies in a dollar. So we're going to round that to 2 decimals. You always round money to 2 decimals. So we look at the 2 decimal place, and that's a 6. The next one is a 2. We can't round this up because it's less than 5. So it's $298.26 is how much he made. And that would be the answer to that problem. So remember the formula, hourly wage times time in your base 10 or your base 100 is going to equal gross pay. And this is the total amount that he earned in the last week. All right, let's look at another problem. In example 2, we're going to calculate the gross pay for Suzanne. She worked 47 hours. Her regular hourly rate is $14.75 per hour, and then she gets time and a half for over 40 hours. Okay, so what we have to do is find the amount of hours she worked over 40 to find her overtime. So we have 47 hours minus 40. That's 7 hours of overtime. And a lot of times you'll see it on a paycheck as OT. It's written like OT for overtime. So that would be the amount of overtime pay she receives. Then we're going to convert overtime to base 10. Well, we don't have to convert it to base 10 because it's whole hours. There's no minutes. So it's already in base 10. So we have 40 regular hours, regular time, and we have 7 overtime, and that's her total for the week. So now we have to look at how that is calculated. So we know that regular time is calculated as the rate of pay, which is, in this case, $14.75, and I can't write 14 apparently, times the number of hours, which was 40 regular hours, and that's going to be how much she made for gross pay. Let's go ahead and do that first. So that was $14.75 times 40. That's $590. So $590 is her regular pay. I'm just going to put some zeros out here for decimals just in case we need it later. Now her overtime, to find overtime, you take the amount of overtime in your base 10, and this is already in base 10 because it's whole numbers. And then you multiply that times time and a half, that's that 1.5, then times the number of hours. So the rate of pay is still $14.75 times 1.5, that's time and a half, times the number of hours, which is 7. And we do the calculation. And that's going to be $14.75 times 1.5 times 7. And that's $154. And this is 875. Remember, we rounded money to 2 places. Because this is a 5, we round that up to 88. So 154.88 is the amount of money that she got for overtime. So now we add the overtime gross, which is this, and the gross 40, which is this, and we get our total gross pay. So we're just going to leave them stacked and add them together. So it's going to be 88 cents. And then this would be 14, carry 1. That's going to be $744.88 is what she worked with 7 hours of overtime. And that's how you would solve that problem. So remember, when you're calculating overtime, it's almost the same as rate of pay regular time, except that you have to add in the factor of, or multiply in the factor of 1.5. You add that to turn it into time and a half. Okay? When you do that, then you get the right calculation, and then you give your 40 hours and your overtime hours, and you add them together, and then this is going to be the result. All right? So remember to write down this distinction that overtime gets an extra factor of times 1.5. Now, there's a couple of ways that people do this. Some people will multiply it after. Some people will multiply it times the hours and then times the rate of pay. It all works the same way as long as we know that the commutative property of multiplication tells us that we could put it in any order and it would work because they're all 3 factors. So as long as you have those 3 and they're multiplied against each other in any order, you'll get it right. All right, so let's look at the next example problem. Now, example 3 is about a salaried employee. A salary employee gets a set amount of wages for a whole year, and it doesn't change regardless of how many hours he works. He could work 50 hours a week. He would still get the same money as if he worked 30 hours a week. Most of the time, it's about paying for a skill or a someone who has a certain certification, and typically what that implies is that they're there to do the job. That is not about the hours, it's about them doing the job that they need to do. And usually that job is about 40 hours, but it could fluctuate, and that's understood when you take a salary position. Sometimes you're only going to work 20 hours a week of real work. Sometimes you're going to work 60 hours a week of real work, but over time, it's understood that it kind of averages out. It evens out. Your salary people are the ones that actually end up doing a little bit more stuff off the clock. Sometimes they have to come in on Saturday and prep for a meeting on Monday. Or sometimes they have to travel over the weekend to do a job in another part of the country. That travel time, they're not compensated for that. They don't get paid for traveling. It's included in their salary already. So you're paying for a skill, you're paying for a job not the amount of time that you put in. And that's understood with a salary position. Now, one of the things that comes along with the salary position is the number of paychecks you get. It's all about how the company is structured. Some salary employees get paid once a month. And so you have to take that once a month paycheck and make it last all month long. You have to budget and you have to pay attention to your spending. Semi-monthly means they get paid twice each month. And usually that means on a specific date, like the 1st and the 15th of every month, they get a paycheck. People who get paid bi-weekly, they get 26 paychecks a year. They're paid every other week, regardless of when the date falls. And then there are people who, as salary employees, get paid every week. So that'd be 52 paychecks in a year, because there's 52 weeks in a year. So this salary employee earns $57,000 and $57,500 a year. So we need to find the gross pay for each check if she is paid monthly, semi-monthly, or bi-weekly. So first, we figure out how many paychecks, if she is paid monthly, she would have. And that tells us how much each paycheck is going to be. So for monthly, there's 12 paychecks a year. So we would take $57,500 and divide that by 12, and that's going to tell us how much she makes each month in one paycheck. Let me pull up my calculator. It's not wanting to pull up. There it is. So we're going to clear this, and we take $57,500 divided by 12, because that's the number of paychecks in a year, and she gets $4,791 and 666,666. So this is going to round to 67, because we always round to two places when we're talking about money. So 4791.67. That is how much for monthly. That's our A here, monthly. So B is semi-monthly, and semi-monthly says twice each month. So 2 times a month would be 24 paychecks. So we just take the number. I could write that a little better, I suppose. The amount of her salary, and divide that by the number of paychecks. That's 24, because it's twice a month. 2 times 12, there's 12 months, it's 24. And we just do another division problem. All right, so let's divide that here. 57,500 divided by 24. She's going to get 2,395 and 83. This does not round up. So 83 cents, 239583. So she would make that each paycheck 24 times a year. C is bi-weekly. So bi-weekly is every other week, and since there's 52 weeks in a year, half of that would be 26. So we're going to take this amount and divide it by 26. So 57,500 divided by 26 is equal to, let's see, 57,500 divided by 26 is 2,211, and this would round from 53 to 54. So that would be 2211.54 in dollars and cents. Put that right there. All right, so what's interesting also is you might want to do the calculation in reverse, because that last paycheck of the year, all corrections are made. So the very last, the 12th paycheck, what they'll do is they'll say 4791.67 times 12. So this is 4 cents over, right? Her $57,500 salary. So her very last paycheck would be 4 cents less. So her 12th paycheck would equal $4,791.63 because they make all their adjustments in the last paycheck. Or usually the last paycheck. Sometimes they'll make that in the first paycheck. So the first paycheck is 63 cents and the other paychecks are 67 cents. But they will make any adjustments in one of the other, typically the last one. So let's see what her final paycheck would be for semi-monthly. So we would take this and we would say 2395.83 times 24. Notice she's 8 cents short, right? She has 8 cents less than she's supposed to make. So her 24th paycheck would be 8 cents more. So that would be 91 cents. So she would make on that 24th paycheck, she would get paid $23.95 and 91 cents. So they would make that adjustment to correct it. And then on this paycheck, let's look at this correction. We have 2211.54 times 26, and that's 4 cents over as well. So that very last paycheck, the 26th paycheck, would equal $22.11.50. So you can see how they kind of make corrections. And some companies are actually better at it than others. Like every third month, they'll take a penny. So that over time, it adjusts. And at the end of the year, they don't have to make as large of a correction. But you can see it's not a big correction. It's not going to impact your way of life. It's just so that they're counting and their expenses all even out to what they're supposed to be. So they will, if you see little tiny changes in your salary employee, that's typically the reason why, or one of the reasons why. But that is how we would find how much you make per paycheck depending on the pay structure for a salary employee at any given company. That's why it's important to ask that question when you interview for a job. If you're interviewing for a salary position, that's one of the things you want to know. So what is the pay structure for this company? Do we get paid monthly, semi-monthly, bi-weekly? How does that work for us? What can I expect to see whenever we get paid? And usually you don't get paid until after the first pay period occurs. Then you work 1 week. Let's say you get paid every week. You work 1 week, then you get paid for the first week on the second week. So it's something that you need to ask about once you get hired. You know, what do I expect? What do I need to plan or budget for based on how often I get paid? So that's a good question to ask in the interviewing process when you interview for a job. All right, and that's all we have for lesson 3.2. I'll see you in lesson 3.3.